Hello, hello, everybody. Happy Friday. This is going to be so much fun. I'm glad that you're able to join us, whether you are watching us live, you're hanging out with us on the replay, or you're hanging out with us on the podcast because we have just such an incredible message to share with you here today. I see some people are joining us from Michigan. Hello, hello. We are live on Facebook, on YouTube, in our Facebook group. So I am just so excited that y'all are here today because we are here to talk about speaking. And speaking is so layered, right? I honestly just thought speaking was, hey, you just start talking and there you go. But oh my gosh, ever since I met today's guest, that she has proved me wrong time and time and time again on that you can't just show up and start speaking and have as much of an impact as you really, really want to have. So I'm excited to introduce y'all to my friend and speaking coach, Heather Sager. So Heather, welcome to the show.
Hello, happy Friday.
Yes. Oh my gosh, this is so awesome. So remind everyone where you are located.
I'm in the Pacific Northwest. So I'm up in around the Portland, Oregon area, and we have a rare sun break this month. The entire month of April has been so sunshiny and wonderful. Not normal for the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And it's funny because I was telling Heather before we hopped on, we both kind of have this like scrunchy hair look. We're totally twinning right now for those of
Yeah.
y'all that can
Yeah.
see
Look at
us.
this.
And
Look at this.
it has been raining all day. I'm just outside of Houston. So it's afternoon for me. It's still the morning for Heather. And I'm just like, it's been raining all day. And I'm like, you know what? None of that is going to cramp our style for today's talk. So I'm so happy that you're here today, friend. And if you're listening on the podcast, you probably are already familiar with Heather because we've talked about public speaking before. And the thing that was most memorable about our last conversation was speaking to yourself. Like how you have to be intentional with getting better at speaking. Like it is a skill. It's something that we all have to get better at. So that is the one thing that really sticks with me. Was there something that you remember from our last conversation that you're just like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have told them this? Or like, what are your thoughts?
Well, here, there's a little struggle for me to remember exactly what we talked about in our last conversation because that was a year ago. And you and I talk almost daily
Right?
since. So no, I would imagine we covered a lot of good things. But yeah, that idea of speaking as a skill, it's always one that throws people off a bit. It's similar, like we both have pretty young kids. I think about watching my kids. I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, and watching them figure out life, like learning how to walk, learning how to feed themselves, learning how to wipe their own butts. Like working on that with my 3-year-old right now. But it's funny because it's when you're learning something, you're really in it and you figure it out. And then all of a sudden you don't really think about it anymore because you've learned how to do it. And then it's never a thought again. Like we don't think about how we walk, put one foot in front of the other. We don't think about how we speak because we've been speaking for the majority of our lives. It's just one of those things that it's out of sight, out of mind, even though it's present in every aspect of our lives. It's just we don't think about it like breathing.
Yeah, this is so true. And you and I were talking right before we started recording, and we were saying how speaking as a skill and as an online business owner, we don't really think of speaking as the same thing as like creating a funnel or setting up your email service provider. But yet it's one of those skills that it's like, if you can get it down, if you can nail it, like you will have people saying like, dang, where did she come from? Like she just knows how to get in there, make a point, like have people take action with those CTAs and do all the things. So what are your thoughts whenever someone tells you, well, yeah, I think speaking is important, but I have so many other things that I really need to focus on?
We all have so many things to focus on. And so here's the fascinating thing with this online industry, right? So if you're a podcaster, if you're a content creator, you're a coach, course creator, if you're in the space of like online marketing, we all are thrown this list of all the things that we're supposed to learn and do. We have to learn how to write the right captions on social media, how to do reels now on Instagram. We have to learn like how do you write show notes that actually pull people in and are useful and optimized for SEO. We have to learn how to use YouTube for strategy, not just for posting videos. We have to learn how to write like there's all of these things we have to learn if we want to be successful online, and we go chasing them. And a lot of times we go chasing those skills because really good internet marketers tell us that we have to have those skills. So side note, I'm going to tell you another skill you're going to need today, but you are the only person that can determine what are the actual skills you need to be successful in what you do. I think that's the most important thing that I always tell entrepreneurs is you can learn a lot of things, but you have to determine and prioritize which skills are going to serve you best. And what I like to say is, yes, we can learn how to write captions. Yes, we can learn how to write emails. Yes, we can learn how to write things and do pretty graphics on Canva. But the thing that's omnipresent in our business is us, and it's our ability to articulate our ideas. Because as entrepreneurs, we're visionaries, we're creatives. Everything we build is from here. We have to get our ideas out of our heads and either on paper or out of our mouths. And I think where we spend most of our time is getting our ideas out of our head on paper. But then when we go to speak, to tell someone about our ideas, to teach or connect with clients, or to sell our services, we get really frustrated because we don't understand why the things we're thinking aren't coming out as clearly or as fluidly as they were in our minds. And what I like to say, it's not that we're broken. It's not that we're unintelligent. It's not that we're bad at thinking on our feet or that some people are more gifted than others. It's just that it's a skill. And for most people, the idea of articulating ideas and coming across an inspirational way, it's a skill that most people have never developed because they haven't had to. So what I like to tell people is focus on the skill of speaking and figure out how can you actually get better at that so that you can show up in the ways that you want to in your business without feeling frustrated or feeling like you're not enough or that you're not supposed to be doing what you're doing. It's just quite frankly a skill that you need to learn.
Yeah. And I feel like some of the things that you're talking about, articulating, coming up with creative ideas, like getting everything out of your head onto paper in a Google Doc or however you're going to use your messages. I feel like a lot of people see that as like, well, that's fluffy stuff. Like that doesn't really have a tangible, like I can't see that. I can't just spend time developing this skill and know that it's going to pay off. Whereas if I were developing a website, then I could see, okay, I need to build a page. I built a website page. So what do you say to someone who's like, I know I need to do this. I mean, I've heard Heather, like I've listened to Heather's podcast before. I know that I need to do this, but they're still stuck in that, like, give them some tough love because I know you're so good at this.
Let me make it not fluffy for a moment. Let's do that because it is one of those things that it's like our health, right? We always know when you do something about it, but we don't actually take a lot of action towards it unless we get mad because we can't button our pants. Because who's worn button-up pants this last year? Like I just put some on this morning and I'm like, whoa, these are tight. We don't think about it until we have to. So let's make speaking not fluffy. So depending on what your business looks like, and obviously I don't know who exactly is listening today, watching today, exactly what you're building, but I would imagine that if you're watching this, you are interested in podcasting. You're interested of stepping up to the microphone, talking about your ideas, and ideally holding people's attention throughout episodes. If you sell digital products or courses or programs, you most likely sell them through live challenges, or you have a Facebook group to go with that. Maybe you do live webinars, or you want to guest inside of other people's groups. This idea of you being able to sell your stuff, newsflash, your webinar template that you perfectly created or bought from someone online, that's wonderful. But an email template in Canva or PowerPoint or Keynote, that's not going to sell your program. Like, sorry, there's the tough love, but it doesn't matter how pretty your slides are. It doesn't matter how pretty your webinar registration page. If people show up and they are not excited to learn from you, if they don't feel like, holy crap, this person actually, one, knows what they're talking about, and two, can help me, and that they have confidence. People are attracted to that confident knowing, that infectious energy that just some people have, that you're like, oh, I don't know what you're selling, but I'm buying it. That's through your voice. That's not this magical thing you were born with, or how you styled your hair that day, or what your green smoothie had inside of it. It's you being able to communicate with intention. So your ability to sell your stuff is directly correlated to your ability to articulate yourself as you intend. Otherwise, you're going to be frustrated because your funnel's not working or your webinar didn't work. And I see so many people get so frustrated about those things not working, and they're trying to figure out what script to use differently. It's no, you have to bring the right vibe and the right words.
This is so good. And I honestly, this is what you do so well. It's one of those things, like, if somebody has a skill, if somebody does something like incredible, like, I don't even know how to articulate exactly what skill it is with what you do. I know you do speaking. I know you're a speaking coach, but I'm talking about the instant connection I felt with you from the very first moment that we met, because we met a few years ago now, which is so crazy because I feel like we've known each other for decades, because we do talk all the time. Like, we're in each other's Voxes, we're texting each other. But at the same time, when I go back to the very beginning of whenever I first encountered you, I remember thinking, she's real. There's no BS in what she is saying. And I want to know what it is. Like, I want some of her Kool-Aid. Like, I want to drink the Kool-Aid that Heather has. So is that something that you have really intended behind your brand?
Yeah. Okay. So many ideas that I have in my brain right here. Let me anchor it down to one simple thing that I can help other people do something similar. But I'll start by saying this: communication hasn't always been easy for me. I was a super, super shy kid. In my family, we didn't talk a lot about emotions. When I was a kid, I remember my mom really struggled to communicate when she would get angry or upset with us. She wasn't a yeller, but she would get really flustered. And I got that from her. I'd get really frustrated and start crying. Like, every time I would get upset, I couldn't get words out. So my mom, I remember when we got in an argument when I was a teenager about me wearing a strapless dress to a dance. It was like a no-go in our religion. We got mad at each other and we wrote letters back and forth because we couldn't have a conversation. Like, that's how difficult communicating was for me. It was just how I grew up. And for those of you who know me or have heard my story before, I'll just share this briefly. My mom got cancer when I was in high school. And my family started a nonprofit organization. And long story short, I became the ambassador of that organization, the front man, if you will, who went on to fundraise. And I would speak at different organizations looking for money for support and education and all those things. And I had this moment when I was 17, 18 years old where I realized that, communication is a necessary in life, especially on things that are important. And while some people around me seem to be drawn to the spotlight, they loved being the center of attention. They always volunteered to be the head of whatever in whatever project at school. That wasn't me. But when something was important, I always stepped up. I always pushed past whatever discomfort, whatever like red, flushing, splotchiness that would happen all over my chest and my neck when I would get nervous. I was willing to go through that because I wanted to speak up for something that was important. So at that early age, I learned, okay, there's something here about being able to communicate because there's benefit in me being able to speak on behalf of this organization to fundraise money. So fast forward, I put myself in a lot of different situations where I learned how to communicate. Now, I will tell you this, it wasn't always intentional. Like, I competed in the Miss America organization for 7 years. I learned a ton about communication from that. So I often joke, a lot of my clients are on the receiving end of pageant training. yet they don't know it, but it's really actually really works. But that's how I learned how to communicate, was through that. And then in my corporate job for 10 years, running a training department, learning about organizational development, human behavior, instructional design, I started putting all these pieces together and realized that teaching and influencing adults, there are a series of skills that go with it. And I've been lucky to collect a lot of those skills along the way and put them together. But here, going back to your question, Crystal, around have I always been this intentional? No, I think what I just shared is that. But what I realized is me being intentional is necessary for how I want to communicate. So years ago, I made the decision around how do I want people to see and experience me when I communicate? And I didn't like what it was at the time. So I decided to change it. So instead of just waiting for other people to be like, oh, she's warm. Oh, she's funny. Or, oh, she's, I don't know, whatever you're thinking right now. But I said, could I actually design it? So I started being more intentional and saying, you know what? I like to be funny. I like self-deprecating humor. I want people to feel comfortable and not that I'm pompous or know better than them. So what if I incorporated self-deprecating humor when I spoke? Okay, what if I didn't get all caught up in my head around saying things so perfectly, but focused more on presence with people? So I started saying, what are these what if scenarios? And I came up with what I call my speaking mantra, which I encourage everyone to do. It's your persona around how you want other people to perceive you. So what I like to do with my clients is I tell them, I want you to think about if you were to engage with an audience today, it could be a Facebook Live like this, or an Instagram story, or a webinar, or whatever it is. Let's pretend that you just nailed it and you clicked end and you scrolled through the chat window. What are the words people would have used to describe you on that video or during that session? Those are the words. They're usually aspirational. How do you want people to describe you? That you pick your best three that fully encompass what you want to be perceived as. That becomes your mantra. That becomes your intention. That becomes when you say, what do I need to work on? How do I need to show up here? What should I wear today? Like, what kind of energy should I bring? You go back to your mantra of the words that set out for how you want other people to see you. So when you see me as funny and relatable and authentic and smart and compassionate and whatever words you're thinking, I can tell you most of it is by design. I have trained myself to come across that way because that is who I am. And that's how I want other people to experience me. Nothing different.
Well, this is so good. And I feel like I kind of have seen behind the curtain, you know, like the wizard. And I'm just like, I'm sitting like on pins and needles because I'm like, I see how you do this now. I have gone through your program. So Heather has a fantastic program, Speak Up to Level Up, where, you know, she has broken these things down and been able to teach so many other people these. But I look at speaking as something that we all do so differently. You know, here I am with my Texas accent, and I am a plumber's daughter, and I talk about that, and I talk about having 3 kids, and I talk about all these different things in my life. And I like how you're able to help people understand their own story so well. And even like you just shared, you know, you talked about your mom. I've heard you talk about your mom several times in your journey and your pageantry, you know, training and everything. So I love that you have, I feel like you've put in like lightning in a bottle, and that is what you're able to help people do. So if someone's listening right now and they're like, okay, so Heather helps people develop this skill of speaking, where is one place that they could start like right now, today, to show up more confidently? Let's just say behind the microphone. I know there's so many stages. We've talked about, you know, you could do virtual stages, Instagram, like all of the social media, but specifically for podcasting, what is one simple tip that you would give to someone? Because you're a podcaster yourself.
I am. I think it's going to come back to this one word, which might seem overly simple and also mildly fluffy, but the word is intention. This is one of my core values that I live by, my core word. I have it posted on my wall. Be more intentional. I think a lot of people go through life, go through work, go through so many things, and we drift. And we wonder why we're not getting the results we want. And we know, okay, we all know this idea of goal setting, right? And I would imagine if you're in the online space, you're an entrepreneur, you're probably one of the people that sets goals where you consider yourself highly ambitious. You probably review and reflect every year and set goals out for yourself and your business. You probably have professional goals, personal goals, financial goals, all the goals. But we drift when it comes to things that we don't necessarily understand or don't think we have control over. So if you want to be more confident behind the microphone, if you want to be more confident in front of the camera, whatever the platform is, if you want to increase your confidence, you have to think about this. There's confidence and there is competency. And those two things go together. One of my mentors, Brennan Burchard, he talks a lot about this conflict between the two. A lot of people think, oh, my confidence, I just have to will myself to like fake it till I make it and get better. But you can grow your confidence so far in a head game. You have to actually start shifting to build skills. So what I want you to envision for a moment, I'm just going to see if I can find a whiteboard here. I don't have one. So just envision this with me. You know, an infinity loop looks like a figure eight, but it's sideways and fancy and it goes on forever and ever and ever. I want you to imagine an infinity loop. And what Brennan talks about, he calls this the competency confidence loop. And what happens is when we start doing something new, say, for example, we're trying to level up behind the microphone for our podcast. We start new and we're like, oh God, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to will myself to do it. So our confidence grows that we're going to figure it out because we can. So we're in the confidence size where we're trying to push in it and we're like, but then if we go, okay, what if I focus on growing my competency? Let me learn from Crystal. How the hell do I start a podcast? What should I put on a podcast? How do I get people to review my podcast? We start growing our competency by reading and listening to other mentors. And as our competency starts to grow, our confidence starts to grow. And as our confidence starts growing, we're like, whoop, whoop, things are going well, it's time to level up again. So what we have to do is then we go learn more competencies, but as we learn more skills, they're new. Maybe we're not as successful and great with it. So as we're growing our competency, we'll actually notice our confidence might wane a bit until we reach a level of our competency where that confidence goes up again. It goes back and forth and back and forth. And I think the mistake that so many people make when they're learning new skills is they catch that first wind where their skills grow and they're like, oh, this is great. And then they plateau a bit, or then things get hard, or it doesn't work as easily. And they're like, I'm doing something wrong. Oh, friend, you're not doing anything wrong. You're exactly where you need to be, because when you're leveling up your skills, of course, your confidence is going to waver because you're learning something new. So you have to continue pushing up that skill. So recognizing how the confidence and competency works together. If you want to grow your confidence, grow your competency, and then keep leveling up. That is my philosophy that I share with everyone. So that's my tangent.
Yes, it's so good. It's so good though, because it breaks everything down into, we can all look back at like pieces of our life, you know, whether it was a big event or a skill that you were all trying to learn. I know for me, it's cooking. I've always loved cooking, and I just slowly started like meddling with new dishes over time. I didn't start out saying, I'm going to make the Pioneer Woman cinnamon rolls. Y'all, like, those are legit, by the way. They're so good. They're so good.
They are.
But I would never recommend that to someone who's like, I don't even know what, you know, a pan is. I don't have any of these gadgets or gizmos in my kitchen. I would never recommend that to them. But it's one of those things that I had to eventually level up. Okay, I'm going to learn how to just make some scrambled eggs. Okay, let's go with that. Then maybe I'm going to throw it all together and I'm going to get a little fancy. I'm going to make a ham and cheese omelet. Oh, that's my big level up, you know? And then it's like, you keep taking these steps. And I love that you relate this back to, you know, children, because most everybody can understand the analogy of you have to crawl before you walk. But baby, after you get that down, Heather and I want to see you run. Like, we want to see you take off and just create these amazing strides in your business. But at the same time, you have to start somewhere. And everybody who is watching this, listening to this, they know that is the motto around here. Keep it up. We all have to start somewhere, because it is just so dang important. So
it really is.
One last question I have for you is, when someone is thinking about leveling up. They want to get started. They're sitting behind their microphone and they're like, okay, Heather told me I got to level up. I got to do something. I got to get out of this comfort zone to really help me get there. From the podcasting perspective, would you recommend that someone spend more time ahead in planning the content they're creating, or simply sitting behind the microphone and speaking more behind the mic? Does that make sense?
Oh, okay. I'm going to not answer the question in the way that you want me to, because I'm not going to make you pick. Because here's the thing. I think a lot of people can make it very prescriptive and say, here's the perfect strategy to make you better behind the microphone. And I'm going to say it's bogus. If anybody tells you there is one way for you to get better, that's just not going to happen. So one of the things I talk a lot about inside of my program, which makes people a little crazy, is I don't give you the scripts. I don't give you the swipe files. I don't give you the fill in the blank, because you are a unique person with a unique brand. Some people love speaking live and coming up with things off the cuff, and they love visual learning. Some people really want to write down their ideas and have a really good, well-baked plan before they head into a presentation. We're all different. We all communicate different, and we have different desires for how we want people to experience us. So I always say, okay, so here's the frameworks. You have to figure out what works for you, what's most natural for you, so you can get your intended result. So I'm going to say the same thing holds true here. You have to honor the fact some people do so much better jotting down a couple ideas and then word vomiting it out. Word vomiting is what we talked about this before on the podcast episode I was on. Word vomiting is just you thinking out loud. I recommend you word vomit before you hit record. Get the words out, start practicing it. It's like, if you work out, it's like doing some movement and stretching before you do a grueling workout, just to get your muscles woken up and going, and you avoid injury. Avoid injury behind the microphone. Start word vomiting before you hit record so that you can get better. So if you're the kind of person who does better planning by saying it out loud, do that. Write down a few things. What I like to say is you want to have a game plan for how you start, how you end, and your milestones in the middle. That is the bare minimum. If you do not have a game plan, your audience is going to be lost and confused along the way. So I would recommend that. So definitely saying things out loud is going to be the best strategy for everyone to level up, but particularly if you're the think on your feet kind of person. That's one. If you are a person who gets tongue-tied, twisted, if you get twisted, I think you know what I'm trying to say, but like you get a little flustered, like I am right now, where I'm like, oh, what the hell am I trying to say? If you get caught up on that and it's like a buzzkill for you where you immediately beat yourself up because you're not perfect, it would probably be a great idea for you to spend a little bit more time working on your outline. Not a ton of time, right? But work on your outline so you feel confident with that. But if you have that hiccup where you're like, I have to get it perfect when it comes out of my mouth, that is where you need to do some work. That piece right there is, if your intention is to say everything perfectly, I'm going to push on you just a bit, because your intentions are self-serving, not audience serving. Because when you're focusing on trying to be perfect, you think it's because you think your audience wants that from you. They actually don't. They would much rather hear the real you and actually hear you make a mistake and not be perfect, but show up with a more authentic voice. They would rather have that than you stressing and sweating and clenching your butt cheeks because the whole time you're trying to be so perfect, but you're actually not being real. So for you, if you were that person, I still recommend, let me circle back and change my mind. I still recommend you need to spend time saying things out loud. So if you need to do more prep, but it does not give you a free pass from actually saying things out loud. I recommend you always word vomit, do your stretching, whatever with your voice before you start recording, because you're not going to know what it sounds like until you actually start speaking. Thinking about what you say and actually saying things, not the same thing.
Yeah, this is so good, and this is actually something that I feel like you taught me. I feel like the more that we've hung out, the more that we've had conversations, I've listened to your podcast and just the incredible tips that you have about this idea of it's not the same. Just it's almost like you're thinking in thought bubbles. It's like you're a cartoon and you're just going around like thinking of all of your thoughts, but then when you actually go to say them and it's the first time they've ever come out of your mouth is when you're sitting behind your microphone. And then it's kind of like a cycle of insanity, right? Because you don't feel prepared, then you get flustered, and then you get mad that it takes you 10 times longer to edit the thing. Like this is
Yeah.
the thing. Like people get
Mhm.
so, how can I, cut down my editing time? Like why does it take me so long to spit everything out? I just want to speak better. And I feel like you've just given everybody permission, for one, to not have this cut and dry, like, let's all put everybody in a box. This is how you have to podcast or think about your show. But I love that you really meet people where they are and their style. But yeah, I totally agree. Like spending
Mhm.
just a little bit of extra time beforehand can really make those episodes pop with intention and really hitting that core message. So
Yeah.
this was so good.
I'm going to say one last thing because I
Yeah.
think that this needs to be said too. Because I hear for a lot of times from people, they're like, well, I'm not really in that like scared bucket. I'm not in that nervous bucket. Like that doesn't really apply to me. So, what I want to speak directly for a moment for those of you who love winging it, those of you who love speaking, that you have no problem with words coming out of your mouth. And the first take, you're like, oh, dang, it was so good. I do really good in the moment. There's kind of two things happening here. Number one, what I hear a lot, if you're one of these people, you probably have moments where you're like, damn, that sounded good. And if you're being real honest with yourself deep down, you're like, oh, I don't actually think that I could say it that good again. So you own the fact that you're a one take wonder and you own that as some magical gift and skill that you have. I'm going to speak directly to you right now because I used to be you, if you're one of these people where I genuinely thought that I was like, oh, this wonderful thing. But really what it was deep down was I was terrified that I couldn't actually get it out the same way again. And I'll tell you this, if you can get it out once, you definitely can get it out again and you could make it so much better. You could make it so much better. So if you're embodying this identity right now that you're so good thinking on your feet, good. I'm so glad you're good thinking on your feet, but imagine how much better you could be for your audience if you had a little humility and said, but what if I prepped a little bit? But what if I planned a little bit? What if I had the audience at center and focused on what they needed by organizing a bit more, by incorporating a story with intention, not just by chance? What if I put a little bit more strategy into what I was bringing to the microphone than just allowing my intuition and witty charm to lead the conversation? Because I think we can be honest with ourselves that a little bit of prep and planning is only going to benefit your audience. And that's why we're doing it in the first place. So if you are one of those naturally gifted people and you've been owning yourself with that for a while, saying like, oh, I'm just so great, I don't need to level up, this is not for me, I might argue you need this the most because you are coasting and you are drifting and you're resting on the fact that you're just being naturally charismatic is going to get you to where you want to go. But if you're not there yet, there is a reason. It's time for you to put a little bit more intention. If you have a solid voice, I mean, how much more freaking powerful could you be if you started putting some backing behind it? So start putting some strategy. Stop resting on the fact that you're quote unquote naturally gifted. Lean into that gift. Those are the skills we should work on the most. So if you're listening and you fall in that category, I hope you heard that with love. But it's really time for you to own that gift, but now learn how to use it with intention.
I am nodding my head. So, like, y'all couldn't see me. I didn't want to take Heather off the screen because I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so good. I was nodding like I was about to get whiplash behind the scenes because I'm just like, this was me. I have never really had a huge fear of like getting on stage and doing all the things. So, therefore, I kind of chalked myself up into this category of like, I'm just naturally gifted. And I was born to be on the stage and speak in front of people. But you are absolutely right about harnessing this power that you have. If you are already confident, if you feel really good about your voice, your message, you know it's very impactful, but you're just kind of winging it. This was me too. this was me for a long time until I met Heather and she was like, stop it. I love you, but stop it. You are just you have so much more potential. And I'm so grateful that, you brought this message here to us today. And you just remind us all that like, we are amazing, but we could be so much better if we were intentional and really put energy and effort into speaking better, speaking with better confidence. And I'm so great. Look, we could talk about this forever and ever. And I know that you have a free training on this that is going to be coming up soon,
I'm doing
right?
a new one. I only do live trainings every little bit. So we have a new live training coming up where I'm going to teach specifically for coaches, course creators, and online entrepreneurs around how to nail your message on podcasts, live video like this. The thinking on your feet thing live, that's hard for a lot of people. So how to nail your message on the live video and other kinds of virtual stages without constantly having to like tweak what you say or wondering, is what I'm saying actually resonating? So I'm going to have that coming up in the month of May. So keep an eye out for that. And I know your audience is particularly in love with the idea of showing up virtually because of podcasting. So if there's interest from you all watching today, or if you're listening to the podcast, let Crystal know, because I would love to do a training just for your group so that you guys can make sure you get your questions answered related to podcasting and all the places that you want to promote your podcast and be more visible to grow your online business.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Y'all please reach out because I would love to learn from you. I feel like I'm already a student of yours. Like we're such close friends, but I feel like every time like you just have these little nuggets of wisdom and these mic drop moments that I'm just like, oh, this is so good. I'm just going to give you some braggadocious compliments real fast. You are so good at what you do. I love watching how real you are. And I love, you're always dancing and animated behind the mic. And I feel like this is exactly who you are on camera and off stage. And it's so important that people know that being exactly who you are is going to be what sets you apart. And it's why I think that you are the person that I love learning all these things from. You're so real. You're so honest. You give me that tough love that I need.
It's the best end to a week ever. Say more things, Crystal.
Yes, say more amazing things. It is. It's just so incredible. And I'm so grateful to have the knowledge that you have shared because like you said, all the things, all the quote unquote, the person that needs to hear this, I have been that person more than once. I have been the person that needs that tough love, that kind of the kick in the pants, that you're already really good at what you're doing, but let me help you take it to that next level. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you. And hey, if anyone listening, and if you guys want to connect online and just see and experience some of these tips, come hang out on Instagram. That's where I'm there usually daily in Instagram stories, and I share a lot of free content. So you can follow me over there at the Heather Sager. I would love to hear from you and hear what you took from today, but more importantly, how you're actually going to apply something that we talked about today. So shoot me a message so I can hear from you.
Yes. Please reach out to Heather. Go follow her. I think, and I'm going to give you another compliment. I think that you do your tips in your Instagram so well. I think like your carousels and then like your post, it's like, it really makes me think like, oh, I hadn't thought about that before. Or I feel like you're calling me out. Like I feel like everything revolves around me. Obviously, all of her posts, everything is so centered around Crystal. Every time I see it, I'm like, oh, I do struggle with that.
It means the marketing's working. That is the power, people. That is the power of having really good messaging.
This is so good. Thank you again, Heather, so much. Y'all, please go connect with Heather. Thank you so much for being here today. And I am just so grateful that Heather was able to join us. And if you want to learn more about Heather, please reach out to her. You can find her across the social channels at the Heather Sager, but she really does love hanging out on Instagram, and you have to go follow her. Go follow her stories. Go see, like, she's on this amazing fitness challenge right now too. That's so fun to follow along with. But for everybody that's watching, listening, thank you so much for being here today. And as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Bye, y'all.